The Hippocratic Oath dictates first, do no harm, right? That's what we all know. First, do no harm, right? And there's a lot of jokes about the NHS and trans people and the UK basically saying, first do no harm and then kind of throwing that out the window. I have experienced that firsthand, and I want to talk about it because just today I found out that I have been basically abused by my doctor, and I don't use that term lightly. I'm in therapy because I have been through that. So first, do no harm my ass is what I'll say. As a bit of background, I live in the UK. I have dual citizenship. I have a Colorado flag here. That's because most recently I lived in Colorado. So I came out as trans for the third time in 2020. It's a long story, but that was when I came out. I was put on a waiting list for HRT. 3 years went by. I didn't hear anything. I moved to Colorado and I went to Planned Parenthood to get on HRT. I was on, at the time, just 2 milligrams of estradiol a day and 50 milligrams of spironolactone twice a day. So essentially, that's your base starting HRT equivalent. Notice I say 2 milligrams of estradiol a day. Take note of that. I started on December 1st, 2023. For those of you who don't know what HRT is, it is hormone replacement therapy. It is undergoing a sex change. So when I go on HRT, all of the testosterone in my body is getting flushed out, and all of the, obviously I don't naturally produce estrogen because I was born male, right? So estrogen starts being put into my system and I start getting the benefits of estrogen. And that includes breast tissue, that includes sort of fat distribution. So my face looks more feminine now than it used to. And, why do people do this? It's because of what we call gender euphoria. It feels amazing and euphoric to have a body that you're actually comfortable in. And I'm not going to sit here and try to defend my case as to why I'm trans and why that is a valid identity, because it shouldn't even come into question. I'm allowed to exist in this world just as much as anybody else is. And I'm tired of having to fight a battle that I shouldn't have to, but that's where I'm at now. What kind of changes does this make? It can change your emotional regulation. It can give you period-like symptoms. I don't bleed, but you do have a hormone cycle that's way closer to a cis woman, okay? And cis, if you don't know what that term means, is referring to a woman who was assigned female at birth. So as in a woman who was born a woman and is staying a woman, okay? So there, as I was in the United States on HRT, the experience was great. I was going to Planned Parenthood. I had regular, appointments every 3 months, and my hormones went up and up and up. Eventually, I was on 6 milligrams of estradiol, and I was on progesterone and spironolactone. And spironolactone is an anti-androgen. It blocks testosterone. Estradiol gives you estrogen, and progesterone gives you prolactone, which is another hormone naturally produced from ovaries that can help with breast growth, but can also help a lot with general mental health stuff. It can help with sexual health, and it can help to prevent breast cancer in the long term. So I switched to injections after a little while instead of pills because I heard they were better for distribution, and I was really enjoying them for a while. And then I moved back to England. And it may seem like a stupid move as a trans person to move from Colorado to England, but I don't think anywhere in the United States is particularly safe for trans people right now. And I don't really think anywhere in England is safe. So it's kind of, I have 2 passports, and both of these countries say that my entire life is invalidated and that they basically don't want me to exist. So, I mean, pick your poison, quite literally. So when I moved back, obviously my biggest concern was getting HRT because, and I have said this time and time again, sorry, that's my cat. HRT is the greatest antidepressant I've ever taken. I have taken many antidepressants, including mirtazapine, citalopram, sertraline, most recently fluoxetine, otherwise known as Prozac, and none of those have worked to my benefit in terms of my mental health better than HRT has, okay? This happiness was unprecedented. It was something that I didn't even know I could experience. So I come back to the UK and, I'm told, well, yeah, we'll be able to get everything for you. The first thing that I learned is that injections aren't available in England, and I think a lot of Europe doesn't do estrogen injections. So I have to switch to pills. Well, that's fine. I'm on 6 milligrams of estrogen. It's still the same dose. It's just not being injected directly into me anymore. At least I have my, prescribed dose. Fine. What, baby? You can come up here. Here, I'll grab him. But, okay, so what happens next? I go in for a regular routine checkup, and the first thing this doctor tells me, I see a different doctor this time. He's retired now, so I guess, Dr. Mitchell was his name. And he tells me I have to lower my dosage by 2 milligrams. He tells me you shouldn't really be on progesterone, and you also shouldn't really be on spironolactone. He gets his information from the gender clinic here in Northampton, and we have to wait a very long time to hear back from them to see the, regulated recommended dose. It's lower than what the recommended dose is according to Planned Parenthood, who have, of course, done leagues of more research than the NHS has towards trans issues. So first strike is, okay, my dosage has to be lowered. Why? And I tried to ask him about this. I tried to push, and he said, well, he didn't really want to talk about it. He kind of wanted to avoid the question and say, oh, sometimes, these things kind of have to happen, and I just have to follow what it says on the screen. Fine, okay. But I could tell that this was a slipping slope. It definitely felt that way. It felt like a kind of slow decline of the medication that I was on. And I was already very upset about that. Every time I went in to see this doctor thereafter, he would try and convince me not to be on progesterone, even though there is absolutely nothing wrong with it, not to be on spironolactone, even though there is nothing wrong with it. And he would tell me that my testosterone is very low for a man. Those were his exact words every time I walked into that fucking office. Your testosterone is very low for a man. Is it? Well, that's good, because I'm not a man. And I'm not trying to be a man. And it doesn't affect my body in any negative way. So why is that every time I come into this office, you have to affirm and say, your testosterone is very low for a man? It's like, you're not saying my estrogen's very high for a man. And why would that be a problem even if it was? Because I'm not a man. So that was already very shitty. But in that exact same meeting, the first one where he told me your testosterone is very low for a man, he also said to me that the only reason I am being kept on HRT is because of my depression and recent bouts of suicidal thoughts. To put it into context, this was, of course, around the time that the definition of a woman was set into law in the United Kingdom, and is clearly defined as somebody who is born female. So, I mean, let's think about this here. First of all, I have suicidal thoughts because of that. This doctor knows that that mandate has come out and that I have had suicidal thoughts because of that, because I had to go to a crisis line and I had to speak to people about how upsetting and crushing this horrific reality of the country that I'm supposed to call home was pushing onto me. I go in and I'm told, first of all, well, your testosterone is very low for a man. And second of all, I'm only keeping you on this shit because you tried to kill yourself, you dumbass. So that's good. Eventually, he says, well, maybe we should switch you over to patches. And I thought, I don't know about that. But against my better judgment, I did some research. I looked into it. I tried to reach out to trans communities and didn't really hear much back, but I did my own research. Lots of people recommended patches, and they said it was the next best thing next to injections. So I thought, you know what, let's do it. Let's switch to patches because it could be better for me at less risk of thrombosis, etc. So I was on 4 milligrams of estradiol a day, and I switched to patches. When I got the patches, I looked at the box, and it said 1 milligram a day, okay? 50 milligrams every 3 days. It seems like it doesn't translate, but in terms of how it distributes in your body, it does change. And I was already worried because that is lower, 1 milligram a day is lower than my initial dose when I was prescribed HRT from Planned Parenthood. That's why I said keep that in mind, because I was prescribed 2 milligrams a day when I first started, and this motherfucker put me from 4 milligrams down to 1 a day. Now, I didn't know fully what this was doing to my body at the time, but over the past 2 or 3 months that I have been on these patches, I have noticed a steep decline of my mental health, including severe suicidal thoughts, severe emotional dysregulation, self-harm, hot flushes, hair growing back in legs and in my facial hair, which has undone some of the laser that I paid for when I was in the United States. If you might not know much about how HRT works, but this is essentially being forced by a doctor into experiencing menopause out of nowhere. Because this doctor, I guess, hates trans people. That's the conclusion I can come to because of how this motherfucker treated me all the time. I don't care what you think about trans people and whether we have the right to exist, okay? How is it not grossly negligent to take somebody who has been suicidal because of the constant politicization of their identity and their existence, and then to take that intrinsic part of their identity that is keeping them held together on like a fucking thin seam that is splitting, and lowering it to the lowest possible dose. He told me, we're going to start you on the base dose that somebody who is menopausal would be on, okay? And that was already very suspicious to me because I was like, I'm not menopausal. I'm trans. There's a big difference between these two things. A menopausal woman still produces estrogen. She still produces estrogen in her system, and she has however many 40, 50 years of estrogen in her system that has been building up. I'm going through a second puberty. They're not the fucking same thing. And you can sit here and say, well, it's not his responsibility. Yeah, you're right. It's not. It's the responsibility of an endocrinologist, okay? When I first moved out to the United States, it's a 3-year waiting list to see anybody in the UK, okay, about HRT in the NHS. Back then it was. I had to go back through the system again because I moved to the States and, came back. And lo and behold, I was put on the waiting list again. 6 years now. It is 6 years for me to be able to see an endocrinologist. 6 years. If a menopausal woman wants to see an endocrinologist, at most 3 to 6 months until they actually see somebody about getting their hormones sorted out. So I went to see my doctor today. And I was wondering why all of this horrible stuff was happening to me and why my emotions were all over the place and why I've been treading water, feeling like I'm running low on energy and I'm about to sink down into this crushing, hellscape that I'm in. And my doctor says, "Do you know what's happened?" I said, "No." She said, "Your last blood test showed us that you were at 452 milligrams of estrogen, and you have gone all the way down, like within your system, milliliters, milligrams, whatever the term is, you've gone all the way down to 128. So, again, it's essentially like being forced into menopause, which is absolutely insane. Doctors are supposed to be impartial. They're supposed to be people that we can trust. Obviously, that just did not happen whatsoever here, and I feel horrific. I feel like I have been abused. I feel like mentally I have been abused. I have to wait 3 months to get my dose changed to what it should be because I have to take another blood test after putting it up slightly incrementally. My testosterone has gone up. My estrogen levels are still depleting. Again, it's not the responsibility of the doctor to do all of this research, but the doctor that I'm seeing now had to, because if she didn't, again, I'd have to be waiting 6 years, and she's breaking rules by doing this. Because she has to in order to fucking save my life, okay? How is it not grossly irresponsible for a doctor to see a patient who is suicidal, who has outright told them that these are the greatest antidepressants she's ever taken, and to see her in this moment of crisis and still say, okay, well, we're still going to lower your dose to 1 milligram a day. That's why I started by talking about the Hippocratic Oath, because I feel like I'm being punished for my mere existence. I feel like this dude definitely didn't follow the Hippocratic Oath of first do no harm. You're doing a hell of a lot of harm, man. The self-harm that I experienced in that time was done vicariously by him. So that impartiality that doctors are supposed to follow has fallen through the cracks. I'm thankful that I have a doctor now. I mean, this guy retired, so I guess his last trick in his book was fuck this tranny. I hope she kills herself. I don't think there's really much of an answer to this crisis. The NHS could put more funding. I mean, they're grossly underfunded anyway, and everybody seems to be convinced it's because the NHS is overwhelmed by immigration. Meanwhile, the rich get richer. So you can believe who you want to about, what the problem is. Ultimately, if I had killed myself in that time, then the blood would have been on the hands of my doctor, who I'm supposed to trust. So the impartiality exists within the vacuum of a binary beset by those who want to reinforce the status quo, those who benefit from it. Anyway, that's my experience with the NHS as a trans person. All I can hope and pray for is that things might one day get better for us. But it seems like things are just going to be getting worse from here on out.